begin the recording as well. I'll just let everybody know that we are recording before we start. Were you good?
Did you want to just start that when we kicked off, or you're afraid we'll forget?
The recording.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that. Here, let me stop it.
Yeah, because I'll usually just when I. Okay, well, I'll kick us off. So I just want to say good morning to everybody. My name is Anne Marie Santamarina, and I'm with Lincoln IT, and it is my pleasure to be here with the Cisco team. We've got some specialists, security strategists. I'm not going to introduce anybody. They're going to introduce themselves, but representing both the Duo and Umbrella brands, so really excited. Just by quick way of introduction, Karen, if you could just bump to the next slide. As I mentioned, I'm with Lincoln IT. We are a Hicksville-based, but we also serve New York City, East Hampton. We've got offices that run from those three markets. We're an MSP, been in business for about 22 years. Karen, I think my next slide speaks a little bit to the background on Lincoln. So we were founded in 1998. We're over 125 employees dispersed throughout the US, and we've got some offshore employees as well who are Lincoln employees. We've got 4 strategic locations where we have actual physical buildings, and then we've got technical people that work in other markets. We've got some people in Indiana. I think we've got some help desk people in Oregon. So our footprint continues to grow across the US, and we're really excited about that. Just jump to the next slide, Karen, please. So just a really quick intro on Lincoln. As I mentioned, we are an MSP, but we, over the 22 years that we've been in business, we've really always just been anchored in services. So we go to market with our services distributed across what we call our care brands. So just 5 distinct brands that talk about the different aspects of technology services that we provide to our clients. By way of quick introduction, IT Care is our managed services portfolio, and Secure Care is our security practice portfolio. And, in our partnership with Cisco, we cover many of these facets, but I think for purposes of today's discussion, we're really rooted in those 2 brands. So I'd like to thank Karen Grace and Cameron Trace for inviting Lincoln to be part of this webinar today. And I'm going to pass it off to Karen. I just would ask that if everybody could mute, just by way of housekeeping, if everybody could mute if they're not speaking, that would be great. Thank you. Karen, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anne-Marie. We're really excited to be here. I'm an account manager in the New York City area, covering and supporting customers like yourselves through partners such as Anne-Marie and the Lincoln IT Group. I live right outside of New York City and I'm accessible anytime to jump on a call with you in Lincoln and talk through any of the technologies that you'd like to talk about. And I'll also have Cameron introduce herself as well. She's a counterpart here in the New York City area.
Thanks, Karen. It does sound like still not muted. If you wouldn't mind just taking a look. We're just getting some feedback. Or Karen, if you can take a look on the WebEx, I think you should be able to mute everyone. But thanks, Karen. So yes, I'm Cameron Trace. I'm Karen's counterpart. I cover Uptown New York City and Westchester County and Long Island. So we cover, all of New York City and then the boroughs as well. And it's great to meet everyone here today. So thanks for joining.
All right, thanks, Cameron. So also today, we're really excited to have our experts talk. So first and foremost, we have Zoe Lindsay, who is a Duo security legacy for us here at Cisco. She's been on the cusp and the forefront of our Duo expansion into the Cisco portfolio. And so she's going to kick it off. But also after she speaks, we have Sandeep Gill. And Sandeep is here to talk. He's a cloud security specialist, and he's here to talk about something really important, and that's umbrella protection and zero trust. So take it away, Lindsay, and we're super excited to have you here.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm going to dive right in because we've got a lot to cover. So today we're going to talk a little bit about zero trust access with Duo Security and with Umbrella. Why are we having this conversation? Well, because especially in the last year, we've seen a shift in the IT landscape. It's been happening for a decade or more, but what traditionally fell within the traditional networked perimeter now has expanded to include more and more remote users, users' personal devices, IoT devices, obviously vendors and contractors. We need to consider how we are protecting access by those outside entities. And the answer to a lot of this has been to more heavily leverage cloud resources, which provides a lot of advantages in terms of affordability and scalability, but also can introduce an element of complexity, which becomes increasingly hard to manage. So when building out what your access strategy is going to be, and taking into consideration that you are likely going to have a hybrid of both on-premise and remote or hosted offerings, you want to look at how attacks are still happening today. Rather than more frequently looking for the weakest foothold in a network and then escalating or pivoting, more often today we see attackers going directly for the data that they're after, exploiting identity as sort of the keys to the kingdom to get whatever information they want, primarily being leveraged through phishing and ransomware attacks. So if we look at all of these breaches, and I love using Verizon's data breach incident report that they publish each year as a reference point, we still know that 77% of cloud breaches involve weak or stolen user credentials. That is actually slightly lower than it has been a few years ago, but it's still a major problem, in particular because of these massive password dumps that have happened, sharing millions and millions of account usernames and passwords. And then after user credentials, we know that the next most likely common element in breaches is going to be a compromised or exploited device. So if we're considering how to secure access, we can start by considering how to stop attacks that use stolen but legitimate credentials, and how to prevent devices with poor security hygiene from accessing Office applications. Well, towards the first side, our solution to strong authentication is multi-factor. And Duo supports a variety of flexible and modern authentication options. We're probably best known for the push method that we introduced and that much of the industry has adopted in the years following. Phone, landline even with an extension, SMS passcodes, either single or by batch, a soft token generator, which will work even if a device is in airplane mode. Newer options like U2F or WebAuthn integrations, as well as biometrics on mobile devices that have it, and wearables like Apple Watch and Android Wear. Now, why have so many different options? Because we know that not every user is going to be in the same situation, and not every use case has the same level or need for security. We know that not all factor options provide the same level of security. I love referencing this work that Google did in conjunction with Stanford's research team, where they looked at how effective different authentication methods were at preventing automated account hijacking. So we can see that the strongest options are like push. However, not every user has a smart device. Not every user will want to use their smart device for work. So it's important to have alternate options there. But there is a huge gulf. You can see it goes all the way from 10% effectiveness for knowledge-based questions, which truly aren't a strong second factor because it's still just something that the user knows, up to 94% or even better for automated versus targeted attacks for specific device-based authentications. Now, Duo follows a zero trust model for securing access. And I want to take a moment because I think there's some misunderstanding that zero trust doesn't infer a lack of trust, that you distrust your users, but rather we are establishing that trust on each connection. It just means that the network no longer automatically infers trust. So we are establishing whether or not access should be allowed each time that a user connects. And this isn't an on or off switch. This is an evolutionary process that starts with strong multi-factor. So first you need to establish trust in user identity. That's the biggest challenge. We know that the next biggest challenge is going to be checking the health of that device. Once we have visibility on the health of devices and are able to controlling access based on what we're seeing and ability to take that telemetry and implement policies, Once we're able to establish those policies and start building out that inventory of users, devices, and policies in our library, we want to expand to cover our next most important and next most important until we've covered all of the use cases in our environment. And finally, once we have all of that scaffolding and infrastructure in place, we want to expand to start to sort out some of that noise, signal from the noise, right? We want to start to analyze that data and see if we can't more easily surface unusual activity and detect patterns so that our admins can focus more time where it's needed. Now, what sort of information do you want about that device? Well, our goal is not to necessarily replace your MDM management service, because that's going to provide you with additional functionality that does require an agent on the device, like being able to remotely wipe that device or provision or deprovision accounts. But we want to get a temperature check on the basic health of that device, and we want that to be universal, so we don't want it to rely on an agent. So with Duo, each time a user connects, at that moment of authentication, you're getting a spot check on the mobile device that they're authenticating with and the endpoint device that they're logging in on for all of the details that you see here. And the important thing to note is that this doesn't require deploying an agent, and it doesn't require any special permissions other than camera access through Duo Mobile so that users can enroll new accounts. So just from the default developer permissions on those mobile devices, we're able to determine if it supports a biometric factor, if there's a screen lock enabled, if the OS has been tampered with, the status on whether it's been encrypted or not, platform, OS and version, and device owner. Similarly, on the desktop and laptop side, we're getting visibility on OS and version, browser and version, and whether higher risk plugins like Java are still installed, hopefully not Flash since that's been depreciated. Along with that, we're giving you tools for self-remediation so that if a user has a device that's not in compliance, rather than having a hard stop and no longer being able to complete their work, you can notify them so that they can self-remediate. So briefly, this is an example of that policy in effect. The user goes to connect to a cloud application, and we are establishing that they have a known device, a Duo trusted device, corporate issued device, that they have up-to-date software, that they match your necessary security configuration, and that it doesn't represent an unreasonable amount of risk. We want to make sure that we are keeping this as intuitive and simple for the user as possible, because we know that usability and the user experience impacts the effectiveness of security. We know that if a user doesn't understand a process or is motivated to avoid a process, it isn't providing us with the defense that we need. And a good example of this is from Duo's Trusted Access report a few years back, where we found that mobile devices that supported a biometric method like Face ID, Touch ID, or fingerprint scanner, facial scanner, had a much higher likelihood of having a lock screen enabled versus devices that only supported a PIN or a passcode. Now we know that the realistic risk is a device being lost or stolen and not being secured so that any data on it can be found by whoever finds that device. So by making it slightly easier for the user by giving them that biometric method, we're able to increase the effective security and have more users that are locking those devices. So there's a lot of elements for deploying Zero Trust for access. You need to establish your inventory of users and devices. You need to start building out your inventory of application integrations, set up an access proxy for secure connections to those devices that remain on site. You need a way to establish trustworthiness, not only in the user, but the device that they're connecting through. Simplify your single sign-on workflow, again, for usability's sake, so that your users have a central portal and consistent process for logging into the services that they rely on. And because not every use case or tool is the same, we need a way to adjust that policy and have more granular control based on that, that system that we're protecting. So here's an example of one of those authentications. The user requests access to an app. We establish trust through a strong auth prompt. We check that device security, enforce the access policy, and only if both user and device pass our policy requirements do we grant access. Now, monitoring for anomalies on a continuing basis is going to be where my teammate's going to come into the conversation here, because before I show you a quick demo that Duo isn't trying to say that we are your one and only silver bullet zero trust tool. We help apply zero trust methods to secure access every time that the user interacts with a login. However, there's other considerations there. You want ongoing visibility, not only a static check when a user goes to log in. So let me just show you briefly what that login process looks like for a user who's going to log into Outlook. They enter their username and password. Now here we're getting an orange banner that shows that this user needs to make an update. The banner is orange rather than red because we have an allowable grace period for them to go ahead and do that update. And they can either click and get immediate information, or they can send themselves a push notification and get some context, their company logo, what they're logging into, who's logging in from where with geo-region based on IP address, and the time of the request. If they don't recognize this, they can immediately report it to their administrators so that they can respond in the course of that potential attack. Otherwise, if they're expecting that prompt, they can hit approve, and they'll be allowed access to that app, but they'll also be notified of the remediation steps that they need to take and how far out of date they are. All of this is configurable within your Duo policies so that you can really tailor it based on your needs. But as I said, you want to make sure that you have a way to establish that information on an ongoing basis, not just when the user is interacting with an application to log in, but consistently as they're connecting to those resources through the network. And that's where my teammate Sandeep comes in.
Thank you, Zoe. So the traditional approach assumes that anything inside the corporate network can be trusted, but the reality is the assumption no longer holds true because, like Zoe highlighted, mobility, bring your own devices, IoT, and cloud adoption. So in a zero trust model, we want to consider that all resources are going to be external. We're going to establish trust in every request, no matter where it's coming from, and we're going to continuously to verify that trust. We want to secure access across applications and networks, and we want to extend trust to support a modern enterprise across distributed network. But in addition, we also want to support models with BYOD, cloud apps, and the hybrid cloud premise environments, and a little bit more. Next slide, please. So with the zero trust model, we understand that access happens everywhere in your environment. We have your workforce, so the users plus devices accessing applications that may live in the cloud like AWS or in data centers. We have workloads, the applications that are communicating with the databases, containers, and services. And then we have the workplace, providing specific access to the network, securing all connections into your network and across your network, even through segmented lines of business, guests who need internet access, and a whole lot more. So how are we ensuring that the workforce, the workplace, and the workloads are secure? So along with Duo, this is how we can extend trust to the workforce. We have Umbrella, giving visibility across all ports and protocols. We have secure endpoints, so we can secure those endpoints, network, and email and get visibility as where threats are going, while also blocking and removing malware. We have email. This allows us to be able to defend against data loss, encrypt sensitive information. We have Cloud Locker, or CASB, which is going to help manage stuff in the cloud, monitor cloud environments, and detect, the loss of secure sensitive data. And let's not forget about Meraki here. Meraki is going to be able to unify device management, control mobile desktop devices, and enable a seamless onboarding and automated security policy enforcement. Next slide, please. So today's focus is going to be around Umbrella. So Cisco Umbrella is built into the foundation of the internet. We have visibility and intelligence to see where threats are coming, and we like to think of ourselves as a proactive solution in your environment. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that we understand people are going through: we have gaps in visibility, the volume and complexity of security tools, and then also limited resources to kind of manage these tools. So our solution, next slide, please. We have to look at the Umbrella multi-function security solution. So as a secure internet gateway, Umbrella is going to integrate multiple security services. We have DNS layer security, we have firewall, we have the secure web gateway, we have the CASB, and we have a little bit more to essentially manage and protect all of your locations as well as your users. We're providing that visibility into where users are connecting, protection from external threats, leveraging Cisco's threat intel. We also actually give the end user the ability to have access to our threat intel to do some more investigations as to what's going on in their environment. We're also providing control as to what users can do with the help of policy and compliance mandates. So having this functionality in a single platform is important because it helps reduce time, money, and resources previously required for deployment, configuration, and integrating tasks. But equally as important is that we understand that not everybody needs maybe all of these things. For some, DNS layer security is a perfect fit. But for others, they want that deeper inspection and web gateway or the cloud delivered firewall, to manage their environment. Next slide, please. So behind, the umbrella security services is an aggregated industry-leading threat intelligence, Cisco Talos. So Cisco Talos is the largest non-government threat research organization on the planet. It's an elite group of experts devoted to providing superior protection for our customers. You can't protect what you can't see. And, Umbrella sees more attacks than any other security vendor in the world. So when you see more, you're going to block more. Next slide, please. And not only, Umbrella uses Cisco Talos team, Umbrella is also using statistical and machine learning models to provide a predictive intelligence powered by a massive but also diverse set of data. If we look at the data, we're seeing more than 350 billion DNS requests across the user base. But that's not the most interesting part, to me at least. I think the diversity of the data is the fact that we're representing all markets, geos, and protocols. So that combined with Talos is giving you an unprecedented view of the internet and allows us to identify patterns or like fingerprints that attackers are leaving behind. And this is just a small example as we're continuously innovating and creating new models to provide better threat detection and classifications. Next slide, please. So Umbrella and Duo offer two of the best effective security solutions. With Umbrella, we're going to be able to protect against threats, gain visibility into internet activity and threats across locations and users. With Duo MFA, we're able to protect against compromised credentials, verify identity of all users, and secure access to any application. Next slide, please. So if you're ready to see Duo and Umbrella in action, it's relatively easy to get started with a trial. It just takes a couple of minutes to sign up. And with Umbrella, you'll immediately see a remediation of about 90% of malware. Like Zoe said, there's no silver bullet in security, but having these layers really does help to create a more secure environment. Thank you. Next slide, Zoe, and I think I'm done.
Yep, I think that was the end of our deck.
Wonderful.
Wow, you guys did really well. That was a lot of information. Thank you both.
Absolutely. Do we get any questions coming in from the audience?
I don't see anything in the chat. Karen, did you have anything come your way?
Yeah, I had a question about, and I'm not sure if this was covered, but for Zoe on Duo integration with other platforms. So basically, I think the question is around if there's something already installed in the network, is there anything that Duo doesn't work with in terms of applications that are installed, or is it pretty much the run of the mill?
Good question. So I love our documentation page. It's not gated behind signing up for a trial or anything like that. But integrations for Duo fall into one of a few buckets. For most integration services and tools that you're looking at out there, if it's a common tool, odds are we have a drop-in integration for it. So on our page here, you can see you've got your remote access tools, your Microsoft suite, common web applications, and IDPs, and then all of the top cloud service providers that our folks work with. But then if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that we've also got our generic SAML integration for any other cloud app that we don't have custom documentation for. You've got some other generic integrations here like LDAP or Radius. We even have an SSH direct integration and some different web APIs. So in most cases, if it has a login interaction with a user, we should be able to protect it. If you have a specific use case that you're not seeing on this page or you still aren't sure is going to be covered, I would say feel free to reach out to me directly. It's a simple address. It's zoe@duo.com, and I'll be happy to get you some answers.
Thanks so much, Zoe. We had one quick question about Umbrella. So We had one person ask about AnyConnect with Umbrella, and I think that's for Sandeep. So basically they asked, like, what are the benefits of using AnyConnect with Umbrella?
Yeah, so one, the deployment. AnyConnect is one of the ways you can deploy Umbrella, as well as the SIG solution as well, SIG Essentials. Easiest way to deploy across the network. I like to think of Umbrella as your VPN-less tool, while AnyConnect, allows you to connect to the VPN. So, the way we see the landscape shift is not everybody's going to always access a VPN. So pairing Umbrella as well as AnyConnect allows you to get the best of both worlds. So the users that are enforcing policies that you have set up, and then if you're not using the VPN, you're still working, say like a Starbucks, Umbrella can kick in and enforce certain policies to make sure that device is safe.
Perfect. Great. All right, that's all of the questions that we had out there today. Thank you so much to our presenters and to our partner, Lincoln IT.
Thank you, Karen. I'd just like to wrap up and say a couple of things. I put in the chat the Lincoln IT website. So if you haven't visited our website, I'd like to invite you to do that. We have a vendor podium feature that we display prominently on the homepage of the website and also in our partner section. And we have a nice article about our partnership with Cisco. So I'd like to invite everybody to check that out. And if you're not signed up, just a quick plug for our sister webinar or brother webinar on Thursday. We'll have Meraki back in the afternoon on Thursday. And if you attend both webinars, we'll be really excited to send you some cookies from Schmackery's in New York City. If you're not familiar, trust me, we think they're going to be s'mores cookies, so there's more. So we hope you can join us on Thursday. We really thank you for being here today. And if there's anything I can do for you or Karen and Cameron can do for you, Zoe, Sandeep, thank you so much for your time and for all your great insight. It was really great to be here with all of you this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Enjoy the day.